Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Thanks to Kojiko TV, this is our chance to talk about what matters to Oakville the most. And today, the future is what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about it with two of the gentlemen in Oakville and Halton who are perhaps most responsible for helping us set out our plan for the future. We have, in no particular order of importance or precedence, Neil Garvey, who is the commissioner at the Oakville level, who's in charge of land use planning, among other things. And we have Kurt Benson, who is the planning director for the region of Halton, and also the chief planning official, which is, I'm going to ask him to explain that title and explain the difference between those two. And I think I'll ask you to start off that way, Kurt, will you?
Well, thank you, Mayor Burton. Thanks for having me today. Pleasure to be here. It's a title. What it represents is, certain delegated responsibilities that I have from regional council to enable things like, local official plan amendments for moving forward without going to council for approval. There's a bit more responsibility in that role when it comes to the chief planning official, and a little bit more care to exercise when exercising those duties. And aside from the balance of my role, which is the director of planning services, where I oversee a team of about 50 staff who work to ensure that the long-range planning vision for the region is adhered to.
Well, Neil is familiar with council delegating authority, because we've done that at the Oakville council level too, to our planning director, and Oakville's planning director reports to Neil. I think we should also clear the decks a little bit in people's understanding by covering off the role of the province. I like to say that the province runs an elaborate game of Mother May I, and the only trouble with that analogy is I've discovered that all kinds of people have never heard of the children's game called Mother May I. So which one of you wants to explain the oversight role of the province? Neil, why don't you take a shot?
Sure. The province, it's all tiered. So the province sets the general requirements for local planning. And so they would set the general parameters that all municipalities need to plan for a certain population and employment figures. And then also they would say you need to account for things like schools and open space and protect things that should be protected. And then it tiers down into the upper tier, which is the Halton region. And they will set a finer grain until it comes down to the local level, where we will actually get into the implementation policies, the look and the form and the feel of each community. So Kurt can probably elaborate if you want.
Well, would it be fair to say that in a unified city like Guelph or Hamilton or Toronto, they aren't two-tier. We are, since 1973 or so, Oakville has been the bottom tier of a two-tier structure with Halton, and then our neighbors, Burlington, Milton, and Halton Hills, are our three partners in this thing. So in a unified city like Hamilton or Guelph or Toronto, there's one official plan and one council. And here we have two official plans, and the local one kind of fits up into the upper one. Would that be a fair way to describe it?
That's right, Mr. Mayor. That's the way the structure of the documents would fit together. In single tiers, it's a unified plan, and with the difference in responsibilities between the region and the local municipality, it kind of follows that framework as well. So you have different responsibilities, so it needs a different set of land use rules around those functions.
Now, it's possible with the Planning Act for 444 municipalities to all obey the statute and yet have local official plans that make communities that look and feel different from each other. I think it's safe to say, all you got to do is travel around Ontario to see the truth of that. Is it equally true or just as true to say that under the region's official plan, Kurt, that the 4 municipalities can find room in that set of general rules to be distinctive among each other?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I think in terms of the region's role in defining a vision under the regional official plan, I think it's a fairly broad framework that allows a lot of latitude for each of our local communities to define its own vision within those broader parameters. I think one example, is our current exercise that we're in right now, our municipal comprehensive review, where we're updating or reviewing our official plan to respond to how we're going to grow in the future. We've based our growth concepts, for example, that we're looking at largely on local plans and priorities. So, what are those local initiatives and studies and planning initiatives that have been undertaken by our local municipal partners, and how should those manifest themselves in a broader regional vision for growth? So I think, we provide a broader framework, but work in partnership with the local municipalities to assist them in defining their own vision in response to the local context.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of respect for the local vision come down from the region. Oakville, for example, really believes strongly that the best kind of employment that we can get for our community would be in a mixed use kind of setting, rather than zoned employment areas that are separate from where people live. I think the evidence is you get higher paying jobs, more office jobs that way, and I've been very happy with the way the region's accommodated our vision there. But you can do more if you want. Now, this exercise that you're engaged in, Neil, we're engaged in a parallel exercise because our plans have to fit together, and we think it's a good idea to do them together. So this municipal comprehensive review is something that the province requires us to do by statute, right? And what's the timetable on here?
That's correct. Yeah, the province does require that the region undertakes its official plan review to accommodate a specific population and employment forecasts found in the provincial growth plan. The time requirement for us to complete the exercise by statute is July of 2022. So we're currently trying to do everything we can to put council in a good position so that deadline or that time frame is met with our project.
And as you said, Mr. Mayor, that it is a bit of an iterative approach where in parallel, the town of Oakville is undergoing a review of its official plan. And that is in large part so that municipal council can inform the region's initiatives and plan. And so we get the look and feel of each of the parts of Oakville reflected and is implementable when it comes to the region's policies. So it's a real true partnership, and it's a bit of an iterative approach to planning.
Yeah. Now, one of the controversies has been that the previous government, just before it left office, I think it was just the year of leaving office, gave us a forecast to 2041 and told us to plan for that. I think it's important to understand that we are already fully planned out to 2031, and that forecast that we were supposed to figure out how to accommodate, boiled down in population numbers to how were we going to fit, and where were we going to fit in Halton, 18,000 new residents a year for those 10 years between 31 and 41. And then when this government came in, they changed their growth plan in a number of different ways. But I thought it was charming at first when their change was instead of from 31 to 41, they said, well, we'll plan from 31 to 51, and the new number amounted to 14,000 a year as I worked out the arithmetic. And I thought, well, that's got to be popular. 14,000 a year is easier than 18,000 a year if you're picky about where you put people. Is that roughly the right math, Kurt?
Yeah, no, that sounds correct, Mr. Mayor. I think we were, I guess, caught off guard with some of the changes that came forward in the summer of last year to the population and employment projections. A longer time frame does have some implications, especially when you're talking about long-term land needs. So as a part of our project, we're looking at different approaches for accommodating people and jobs in our region to 2051. And a couple of the variations or options that we're looking at, explore this idea of urban boundary expansions. I think it is a bit difficult, though, when you kind of look that far into the future, and when you're being kind of asked by the province to make long-term decisions based on a whole lot of uncertainty in terms of what can change between now and say 2041, when we have to accommodate that next planning stage. So it does bring about some uncertainty in terms of how we're positioning our work, but we are making sure that we're trying to do that assessment to tell the story about what it could look like and what some of the options are for our community to grow to that time frame.
Well, I remember back in the period 2007 to 2009, when we were working on the Livable Oakville Plan and creating what you would know as ROPA 38, but which we called, we wanted to name the official plans in a way that would show right at the title level what the aspiration is for the plan. And so it took quite a bunch of doing, but ROPA 38's name was Sustainable Halton. And we thought this was a charming nesting of Livable Oakville and Sustainable Halton. And we were bravely forecasting, or I guess the province was bravely forecasting numbers out to 2031. And we were dealing with the questions that we're now dealing with for the next future. Back there in 2007 to 9, we were dealing with, well, what are we going to do over the next roughly 20 years, out to 2031. And now, as we have just begun the 2020s, we were only dealing with the 10 years from 2031 to 2041. Now we've got this 20-year thing, but it feels 10 years sooner. So it is a bit of the question arises, how can you forecast that far? And aren't you a little bit worried about making a mistake when you're looking out so far? How do you think, council, I know the regional council has expressed some hesitation about, how far into the future should we attempt to look? What do you think we should do?
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation. I think that the change that was introduced was brought about fairly last minute. We had to adjust some of the work to respond or react to kind of that longer planning period. I think what we're seeing now with the pandemic is there's a whole deal of uncertainty. We don't have the confidence that we had, say, prior to the pandemic to actually, put stock in some of the assumptions and some of the projections that the province has had. And I think in particular, on the employment side of things, where we have a rapidly changing economy, there's a rapidly changing, approach in terms of where and how we're doing our work in contribution to, economic development objectives. And there's going to be some implications falling out of that. Some are felt more in the short term, but there may be some more resounding or longer term effects as well. So I think that's one of the challenges we want to make sure that regional council is very aware of as we kind of approach this question. How should we grow to 2051, and does it make sense to kind of take more smaller increments and look at perhaps a shorter term option rather than a very clear path to accommodate growth targets or assumptions to 2051.
I think there's another reason. The structure of what we're being asked to do has this long-term vision that we're being asked to contemplate in a very short period, very precise period of time. So the 2051 horizon needs to be brought back down into the local level, what's happening on a specific corner or within a certain community. And because of the uncertainty, the longer you, Mr. Mayor, you tell a great story about John Maynard Keynes and what happens in the long run, and maybe you can relate that. You tell it so eloquently, but the more precise you have to be in the short term, trying to accommodate things that we just don't know. If you look backcast even a year, things are vastly different, and it is transforming the way people view their surroundings. So being asked to project now, even 5 years or 10 years, is going to be enough of a challenge, let alone out to 2051.
Well, to try to motivate the province to reconsider itself, I've written and submitted to the Star an op-ed that basically argues the province itself has broken its own growth plan at least 44 times with ministerial zoning orders. Maybe that's a sign that they don't even like their growth plan, and maybe we should, take a pause and fix it. If it's not good enough for them to follow, why are we following it? It's that perhaps that's a cheeky thought. Now we have reduced our, but our strength is obedience. We live in a crown system of government. That's a top-down system of government, and the legislature passes the growth plan and says this is the deal. And so, Kurt, you and your forces, you and your consultants and staff have come up with 4 concepts that you're out consulting the public on. Growth concepts 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And we have until May 28th, as I understand it, to give you feedback. I will say that Oakville's Community Leaders Roundtable, Oakville has many residents associations and townwide groups, and we have a lot of community engagement in this town. And many of them have already given you submissions on your growth concepts. And they may not be fussed by only having 6 weeks or so to May 28th. But I know that other parts of Halton are not as engaged at the community level as maybe Oakville is. And I don't know if you've had a lot of input from all over. Is there enough time between now and May 28th?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think, yeah, you're right. And thanks for kind of giving the opportunity for us to share a little bit more information on our initiative. We're quite interested in hearing feedback from all of the Halton community on the growth concepts discussion paper. For those that are watching, they can access that information at halton.ca /ROPR, which stands for Regional Official Plan Review. There's a whole host of documents there that folks can sift through in terms of what we're looking at in terms of being responsive to the provincial growth plan to allocate or potentially allocate growth in our region. The initial engagement timeframe allowed us to receive comments to May 28th. We are likely going to extend that time frame to make sure that we're getting as much participation in the community as possible. You're correct that a lot of the Oakville neighborhood groups have already contributed, and I think perhaps the other plug I can make here is that we're quite willing to meet with any and every group on this topic. We feel it's an important topic to our community, and certainly as a staff have a standing offer to anyone who would like a presentation or a meeting relative to some of the issues and things explored in the growth concepts paper. We'd be quite willing to make time and have those types of conversations with community members.
Well, that's super. Not only is there a community leaders roundtable meeting coming up in the next few days, and maybe we'll talk about what you could do for them. Some of our residents associations have their annual general meetings in the spring, in April, in fact. So there's some, and they are always very interested to have presentations, and they'll get several hundred people. Back when they would meet in person in auditoria and churches and the like, they'd get a couple hundred people to these meetings. And on Zoom, they're still getting good turnouts. So there'll be some opportunities there. So thank you for that. I would describe, I'm going to try and see if you'll agree with this description of the four growth concepts. They range from a whole bunch of sprawl to a middling amount of sprawl to a little bit of sprawl. And I guess the fourth one I would call only jobs, only sprawl for jobs. I guess, no residential sprawl, but an urban boundary expansion for the purposes of jobs. Is that a TV light way to describe it?
Yeah, I think so. The one concept that is really looks at containing population growth or residential growth in the existing settlement area boundary is concept 3. That's the one that really tries to curb that outward growth, and it's kind of the corollary of that one is the one that sprawls the most, I would say, and that's concept 4, which is really, if we only met the minimum requirements of the provincial growth plans and intensification targets, for example. So, but in all scenarios, I think we have initially accounted for, employment or accounted for employment growth that requires additional land in order to provide the diversified opportunities for Halton's economy. We are consistent with some questions from Regional Council. We're going back and we're looking at opportunities to continue to shift our thinking in terms of how much of that employment can we capture within the settlement area, and hope to present to Council through a report the results of some of that initial analysis very shortly.
Well, that'll be good. I think we'll all be eager to read that. Neil, I've come to believe as we look at our own intensification applications in our growth center and in our growth nodes and our growth corridors, I'm hoping that we can change the question that we ask from, oh, gee, why does the building have to be that tall? We have to flip that around to say, wouldn't more than that fit there? And if we can get our heads into the space where we look at a proposed 20 or 25 story building and say, well, what would be wrong with 30 or 35? What are the possibilities here? That's the thinking that's required, I think, if we're going to avoid sprawl. And we're all, in Oakville, everybody says they're against sprawl. And if you want to be against sprawl and all, you're going to have a building or two. So we do have some ongoing dialogue to get accomplished around what does it mean to say you don't want more sprawl.
That's exactly it. That's a great way to characterize it.
Now, at the local planning level in our MCR, we kind of have to look up, I'll say, to Kurt's shop to see where they're going, and I hope actually I don't think the average person knows that you guys all talk all the time, and I think as soon as people hear that, they know, oh, of course it doesn't make sense that they would work in vacuums from each other. But how would you describe your current work right now at the town level to keep up with where Kurt's going?
Well, it's almost a daily process, Mayor Burton, and we have it occurring on a number of different levels. So all of our technical staff are in constant contact, and it's important to realize that it's not just a planning exercise, but it's an infrastructure delivery exercise and a natural environment exercise. So all the technical experts need to be on the same page. So there's regular meetings amongst the engineers and the environmental planners and the land use planners to make sure that we're exchanging information, that we're conveying the thoughts of our community and our councils so that they can be reflected in each other's documents. And like I said earlier, it really is an iterative process. So we have this intention, and there may be 2 or 3 solutions to get there. And we need to make sure that we convey those principles and ideas in a way that is meaningful to both our local council in the local context as well as the regional setting as well. It's got to be consistent across the region, but also make sense in the local setting as well.
Yeah, we've had, our council at Oakville has always been like united through 4 elections that we want the infrastructure piece of the growth puzzle to not cost the taxpayers anything. And if it costs us anything, we want it to be reasonable or minimal. You know, there's this funny concept in the costs of growth around this concept called benefit to existing. So, you know, if you widen a road and from 2 lanes to 4 lanes and you rebuild the center as a result, the road you had has just been improved, and that's your benefit, and the other is the growth. So we have to work hard all the time at trying to make sure to true up the infrastructure pieces and to try to make the growth as efficient as possible. That's one of the reasons I'm coming around to believe that, you know, towers might be a way to help with that. I mean, you don't have to lay a whole new road in a whole new area. That might be cheaper than, you know, widening a road might be cheaper than building new roads. So, Kurt, where are we headed from here? What's our next objective on the municipal comprehensive review?
Yeah, so Mayor Burton, we're in listening mode right now. We want to hear feedback from the community on the growth concepts. It's very important that those who are interested in community development and the future of Halton and the town of Oakville, that they go to the website, they take a look at the discussion paper and submit us our comments. There's an online questionnaire there, or conversely, send us an email and you know, we can line up a meeting, but certainly participate. It's really important that everyone does so.
All right, well, I can promise that Oakville, the engaged community, will stay engaged with you. And Neil, I think you've already discovered how engaged the community can be. So, you know, there's no news for you there. And I want to thank you for joining us today. Anytime you want to reach me, the address couldn't be easier. It's mayor@oakville.ca, the simplest email in the world to remember. And if there's something that you'd like to talk about on Oakville Matters, just give me an email or give me a call, 905-330-1500. I answer my own phone. Till we see you again, goodbye.